My name is Reagan Brooks and I am 30 years old. As I sat at my parents' dining table watching my sister Katie soak up praise for landing a tiny role on a Netflix show, I felt invisible. The same feeling that had followed me since childhood. For years, I had been silently transferring money to keep their house from foreclosure while they thought Katie was their savior. Then my mom said the words that made something inside mess up. Before I tell you how my family perfect facade crumbled that night, drop a comment letting me know if you have ever been the unappreciated backbone of your family, and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your voice. Growing up in suburban Boston, my childhood home was a place where appearances mattered more than reality. My parents, William and Diane, created a world where success was measured by trophies and applause. Unfortunately for me, my practical nature and analytical mind never quite fit their definition of achievement. Katie arrived 2 years after, and from the moment she could walk and talk, she commanded attention. Where I was reserved and thoughtful, Katie was bold and dramatic. By age 7, she was performing in living room plays. She wrote herself with my parents as her captive, adoring audience. I would bear recruited to handle the lights or move props. Always the support crew, never the star. My father worked as the principal of the local high school, respected in our community for his leadership and dedication. Mom sold real estate part-time, focusing more on being available for Katie performances and auditions. They were not wealthy but comfortable and deeply invested in creating an image of the perfect American family. In high school, I found my strength in academics. Math and economics made sense to me in a way people sometimes did not. I joined the debate team in academic decathlon, winning state competitions and scholarships. My report cards were perfect rows of A's. My parents would nod with minimal acknowledgement, then quickly shift the conversation to Katie's latest drama club triumph. For Katie's 8th grade musical, my parents invited extended family and neighbors, purchasing flowers and organizing a small reception. Afterward, when I was named valedictorian, they simply said, "Well, that was expected, was it not?" No celebration, no recognition that I had worked every bit as hard as Katie did for her accomplishments. College decision time brought the differences into sharper focus. I chose to study finance at State University, earning a substantial merit scholarship. Katie, with her BHMRS, average but impressive audition, was accepted into a prestigious arts program 3,000 miles away in California. My parents took out a second mortgage on the house to afford her tuition and housing. Katie has a special gift, my father explained when I questioned the financial decision. We have to nurture that. You will be fine no matter where you go. He was right about one thing. I was fine. I graduate summa cum laude in 3.5 years. Instead of for saving money and immediately securing a position at a respected investment firm in Chicago. Meanwhile, Katie stretched her degree to 5 years with my parents covering the extra expenses. After graduation, Katie moved to Los Angeles to make it big, as so always said. Her actual jobs were waiting tables and occasional commercial work. But from my parents' updates, you would think she was on the verge of an Academy Award. Every callback was celebrated. Every tiny non-speaking role in a television show was treated like a starring role in a blockbuster. Katie Emmett, the lead actor from that police show yesterday. Mom would gush during our monthly phone calls. He said, "She has real presence. It is only a matter of time." Then she would rush through bubblegorry questions about my life. My promotion to senior analyst was met with a quick, "That is nice, dear," before pivoting back to Katie adventures. 6 years ago, everything changed for my parents. The school district faced major budget cuts and my father was essentially forced into early retirement. With a package that was far less generous than expected, simultaneously, the housing market crashed, decimating my mother's real estate business. Their comfortable financial situation unraveled quickly. I discovered the severity of their situation during a rare visit home. While my parents were out picking up dinner, I noticed past due mortgage notices on my father's desk. They were 3 months behind and facing potential foreclosure. Next to the notices was a letter from Katie asking for money to cover her rent in Los Angeles. That night, it transferred $4,000 to my father's account. When he mentioned the banking error the next day, I said nothing. A month later, I set up an automatic transfer of $100 monthly. Over time, as their expenses increased and property taxes rose, it gradually increased the amount to $1,500. For 6 years, I continued these payments, never telling them I was the source. It was complicated by the story. They began telling family members that Katie was supporting them with her Hollywood money. At family gatherings, they would praise Katie's generosity while I sat silently knowing it was my money keeping them afloat. Katie's success has been such a blessing. My mother once told my Aunt Meredith at Thanksgiving within my earshot, "She makes sure we are taken care of." The irony burned, but I said nothing. Part of me felt obligated to help my parents, who despite their favoritism, had still provided for me growing up. Another part felt a bitter resentment growing. I was succeeding in the ways they had taught me to value education, financial stability, responsible planning, yet none of it seemed to matter compared to Katie, occasional commercial or 2 lines on Ackable show. As months turned into years, the financial burden became heavier. I had passed up opportunities for travel, delayed buying my own home, and lived far more frugally than my income required, all to ensure my parents kept their house and lifestyle. Meanwhile, Katie's social media showed her at exclusive resorts on beach vacations, and at Hollywood parties. My parents never questioned how she managed this lifestyle while supposedly supporting them. The resentment grew quietly, like interest compounding in an account no one monitors. I began to dread holidays and family gatherings, knowing I would once again be relegated to the shadows of Katie's imagined success. But I continued the payments month after month, telling myself it was the right thing to do. Occasionally, I would try to offer actual financial advice to help my parents become more self-sufficient, but these suggestions were always dismissed. "We do not need financial lectures, Reagan Brooks," my mother would say. "We have managed just fine." All these years, the irony of this statement was never acknowledged by my calculations. Over the 6 years, I had contributed over $80,000 to my parents' household expenses. Money they believed came from Katie. Money that had prevented foreclosure, paid property taxes, covered medical bills, and even funded home repairs. And yet, whenever I visited Katie, childhood achievements still lined the mantel and walls. My academic awards were stored in boxes in the attic. It was as if my contributions, both financial and personal, simply did not register on my parents' scale of success. The invitation came via text message from Mimither. "Katie landed a recurring role on that new Netflix show. Family dinner this Saturday to celebrate. Be here by 5. No question about my availability, no acknowledgement of the 3-hour drive it would require, and certainly no awareness that I had an important presentation that same morning. Still, I rescheduled what I could, nailed my presentation, and hit the road immediately after. Determined to be supportive, despite the familiar knot forming in my stomach. I arrived at exactly 4:55, already seeing the driveway filled with extended family cars. Aunt Meredith's SUV took the prime spot near the door. Uncle Frank's sedan was parked along the curb and several of my cousin's vehicles filled the remaining spaces. I had to park a block away, walking briskly in the autumn chill to avoid being late. Music and laughter spilled from the house as I entered without knocking, our family custom. In the living room, a scene straight from my childhood unfolded. Katie stood in the center, gesturing dramatically as she regaled everyone with a story. My cousins, Denise and Peter, sat enraptured while Aunt Meredith nodded enthusiastically. Uncle Frank laughed heartily, his booming voice filling the room. Katie paused mid-sentence when she saw me, her expression flickering briefly before stretching into a wide smile. "Reagan Brooks, you made it." She bounded across the room for a quick hug that smelled of expensive perfume, then immediately returned to her story. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. "Reagan Brooks, you are right on time for once." The subtle critique was not lost on me. She gave me a quick pat on the shoulder, the closest she came to physical affection with me, while reserving her embraces for Katie. "Meet Logan," Katie called, gesturing to a tall, well-dressed man I had not noticed before. "My new boyfriend. He works in finance, too, so you will actually have something to talk about." Logan stepped forward, extending his hand with a genuine smile. "Nice to meet you, Reagan Brooks." Katie has told me about her successful sister in Chicago. The compliment surprised me, as did his firm handshake and direct eye contact. Most of Katie's boyfriends tended to be as self-absorbed as she was, but Logan seemed different. As we exchanged pleasantries, I took in the living room, noticing the new furniture and recently painted walls. The hardwood floors had been refinished and built in. Bookshelves now framed the fireplace where Aunt Sophia had been plain. Drywall renovations that had likely been funded by my monthly transfers. Uncle Frank approached, drink in hand. "Reagan Brooks, good to see you. How is the money business?" Before I could answer, He launched into a detailed account of his own business troubles. The restaurant supply chain, is a nightmare these days. I am thinking about restructuring some debt. Any free advice for your old uncle? He laughed, but I could tell the question was genuine. As I began offering some general suggestions, I overheard my mother talking to Aunt Meredith near the window. Katie has been so generous with her success, she was saying in a hushed but audible tone. We could never have it on the kitchen renovation without her help. My hand tightened around my water glass. The kitchen renovation had happened 3 months ago. Right after I had sent an extra $2,000 when my father mentioned their refrigerator was failing. My cousins Denise and Peter wandered over, both looking bored. Note that Katie was occupied with Logan. So, you still doing that boring bank job? Denise asked, scrolling through her phone as she spoke. Investment analysis, I corrected mildly. Just got promoted to department head, actually. Cool, Peter said with zero interest. Did you hear Katie might be in a movie next year? She said some director saw her Netflix scenes and wants to meet with her. Before I could respond, my mother called me into the kitchen. The newly renovated space gleamed with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. The farmhouse sink I had listened to my mother dream about for years was finally installed, along with the custom cabinets had shown me in magazines. You could have worn something nicer, she said by way of greeting, eyes critically scanning my business attire. The same clothes from my morning presentation, and have you gained weight? That jacket looks tight. I came straight from work, Mom, I explained, choosing to ignore Hewitt's comment. Had a big presentation today. Actually, I was promoting our new investment strategy to the executive board. They approved it and I will be leading the project team. Shara responded, turning back to the stove where she stirred Katie's favorite pasta dish. Can you take these rolls to Feedable and tell everyone dinner is in 5 minutes? As I arranged the rolls in the breadbasket, I noticed my father's desk in the corner of the adjoining office. Bills were stacked neatly by the desk computer, and I could see the edge of one of my checks peeking out from beneath a folder. My stomach tightened. My father entered the office, stopping short when he saw me. Reagan Brooks, you made it. His expression held something Mimither lacked a trace of guilt. Hi, Dad, I said softly. An awkward moment passed between us. He seemed about to say something significant when my mother called from the kitchen, William, bring the wine glasses. The moment broken, he nodded and moved to the cabinet, collecting glasses without meeting my eyes again. We gathered around the dining table, which had been extended to accommodate everyone. Katie was given seat of honor beside our parents, while I sat between Uncle Frank and Micahson Peter, directly across from Logan. The table was set with the good china, the kind reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Fresh flowers formed an elaborate centerpiece, and candles flickered in polished silver holders that had belonged to my grandmother. I noticed my father hand trembling slightly as he poured wine into each glass. He had lost weight since I had last seen him, and the shadows under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. For a moment, my resentment faltered, replaced by genuine concern. Whatever their flaws, these were still my parents growing older, facing the vulnerabilities of aging. It was why I had started the payments in the first place. But as my mother beamed adoringly at Katie, adjusting her napkin for her as if she were still a child, the familiar ache returned. I had never known that kind of doing attention from her, not even when I was small. I took a large sip of wine, preparing for thieving ahead. A toast, my father announced, raising his glass on was seated to Katie and her big break. We always knew you would make it, sweetheart. Everyone raised their glasses, murmuring, congratulations. I joined in, genuinely happy for my sister, despite everything else. Creative Essex had been her dream since childhood, and I knew how hard the entertainment industry could be. Televarioni about the role my mother prompted, practically glowing with pride. Katie sat down her glass with a dramatic flourish. Well, it started with this absolutely grilling audition process. 8 callbacks. Can you believe it? The director said. I was the only one who really understood the character emotional core. She launched into an elaborate tale of her audition triumphs, describing in detail how she had impressed various industry executives. According to her story, she had beaten out actresses who had been on major shows thanks to her unique interpretation of the character. And how many episodes will you be in? I asked, skettering a brief pause, genuinely curious. 3 guaranteed, but the showrunner hinted it could become more if the audience responds well. Katie answered, which they will obviously. I smiled and nodded, then added, that is great. Katie, really exciting. Anyway, she continued, barely acknowledging. Micament, the filming schedule is so demanding. 5 a.m. call times, some anime shooting until midnight. The glamorous part is what people see on screen. But let me tell you, the struggle is real. I took another sip of wine, thinking about my own. 500 a.m. starts to prepare for market opening. The late nights analyzing portfolios, the weekends spent catching up on financial reports. But those were just jobs, not careers worthy of dinner time stories in our family. And the pay is ridiculous. Katie continued, you pour your heart into these roles and they expect you to live on practically nothing. If I did not have any commercial work on the side, I do not know how I would survive in LA. I nearly choked on my wine. Katie commercial work was sporadic at best, certainly not enough to support her lifestyle of designer clothes and trendy restaurants that she documents extensively on social media. And definitely not enough to be sending substantial sums to our parents as they believed. When I tried to join the conversation with a question about the show premise, Aunt Meredith inadvertently spoke over me asking Katie about the famous actors she would be working with. The moment passed and I returned to my pasta listening as Katie name dropped several celebrities she had allegedly met in passing. Midway through Donner, my father excused himself briefly, returning with a small rapid box that he placed beside Katie plate with ceremonial care. Your mother and I wanted to give you something to commemorate your first recurring role, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Katie gasped dramatically as she unwrapped the package, revealing a sleek watch with a mother-of-pearl face. Oh me, God, is this the one I showed you at the mall? This is like a $1,000 watch. We saved for months, my mother said proudly. You deserve something special to mark this milestone. I stared at my plate, heat rising to my face. The watch purchase coincided with a month when I had sent an extra $500 after my father mentioned unexpected car repairs. I had skipped a weekend trip with friends to afford that extra money. Speaking of special things, Uncle Frank said, gesturing around the dining room. The house looks amazing. You finally did Alto's renovations you have been talking about for years. The kitchen is a dream, my mother replied. And having hardwood floors redone has made such a difference. It was getting embarrassing having people over with the house falling apart, Katie added casually. I am glad it all worked out. The implication that she had something to do, Reagan Brooks with it all working out, hung in the air. I set down my fork, careful if accusing on keeping my expression neutral. Reagan Brooks mentioned Reagan Brooks. She received a promotion, Logan said suddenly, looking directly at me. Department head, right? That is impressive at your age. A brief surprised silence followed before my mother said, yes, Reagan Brooks works for an investment firm. Very steady job. She turned immediately to Katie. Tell everyone about the director who might consider you for the feature film. As Katie launched into another story, I caught Logan watching me with an expression I could not quite read. Curiosity perhaps, or something like recognition. So Reagan Brooks, Aunt Meredith said during a low, any special someone in your life these days? Your biological clock is not getting any younger. You know. She laughed as if she had said something original and funny. Before I could swear, Katie jumped in. Reagan Brooks only dates these super serious, uptight financial types. I keep telling her she needs someone who will help her loosen up and actually enjoy life. I enjoy my life, I said quietly, but firmly. Katie rolled her eyes. You work 60-hour weeks and probably have a color-coded system for your sock drawer. There is nothing wrong with being organized, I countered. See what I mean? Katie said to the table at large. So, serious, I have this friend in the production department, Jason, who might be perfect for you. He is a bit more fun than your usual type. The conversation shifted to Katie's extensive social network and her apparent prowess as a matchmaker. I tuned out, taking the opportunity to refill my water glass. The housing market is finally recovering, Uncle Frank commented to my father. You must be relieved, especially with retirement, though I have to say, you seem to be doing well for yourselves. New renovations, nice gifts. He raised his eyebrows questioningly. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while my mother jumped in smoothly. We have been fortunate with some investments paying off. She deliberately avoided looking in my direction. I always tell them real estate is the way to go, Katie said confidently. Buy when the market is down, sell when it is up. Basic principles. I bit my tongue remembering long conversations I had with my father about diversifying their retirement accounts, advice he had politely listened to but never implemented. Now Katie was dispensing financial wisdom. She had likely heard own a podcast, and my parents were nodding as if she were Warren Buffett. Katie Hazelways had a good head for these things. My mother added, even as a child she understood value. Uncle Frank looked skeptical, but said nothing. I noticed my cousin Denise, smirking slightly, perhaps sensing the inconsistency. Remember, when the housing crash hit, and things were tight for a while, Katie said, touching my father's arm sympathetically. I am just glad I was in a position to help out. Family first always. My chest tightened as I watched me parents nod gratefully at Katie. 6 years of my sacrifices were buying casually, claimed by my sister, who had never contributed a cent to their welfare. As far as I knew, the tension in my body was becoming physical. A clenched jaw, white knuckles around my water glass, a dull ache spreading across my shoulders. Logan must have noticed my discomfort because he tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. I understand you were a high school principal, William. That must have been rewarding work. It was. My father began, seemingly relieved by the subject change. But Katie interrupted. Dad waste, best principal ever. Everyone loved him. I used to visit his office after school, and all the teachers would say I had his charisma. That is probably why I am good with directors now. I learned at those people skills early. Logan tried again. Reagan Brooks mentioned you have been doing some consulting work since retirement. Just a little career counseling at the community college, my father said. Nothing as exciting as Hollywood, he added, smiling at Katie. I felt a growing pressure in my chest, like a balloon slowly inflating beyond capacity. Every dismissal, every redirection, every moment of Katie taking credit for things she had not done. All of it was building towards something I could not yet name, but could feel approaching with the inevitability of a storm. Honestly, Reagan Brooks, Katie said, twirling pasta around her fork, you should consider scaling back your hours. Life is not all about work and saving money. Look at me. I may not make as much as you do with your fancy finance job, but I actually enjoy my life. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water before responding. We all make different choices. That is not a choice. That is a default setting. Katie laughed. Seriously, when was the last time you did something spontaneous, took a vacation, had an adventure? My mother nodded in agreement. Katie has always known how to live in the moment. You have always been so serious, so focused on the future. Even as a little girl, you were saving your allowance while Katie was using hers to put on neighborhood plays. Some of us have responsibilities, I said, more sharply than I intended. We all have our responsibilities, Katie countered. I have auditions, lines to memorize, networking events, but I make time for joy. That is the difference. Katie has always been so good at balancing work and pleasure, my mother added. And she still manages to be there for family. That takes emotional intelligence. I set down my glass carefully. Different kinds of intelligence are valuable. Of course, they are, dear, my mother said dismissively. Now, Katie, tell us more about the potential film opportunity. That director sounded very interested. Katie launched into another elaborate story about a famous director who had supposedly watched her scenes and expressed interest in meeting her. According to Katie, this could be her breakthrough role, the one that would launch her into real stardom. I might need to invest in some new headshot and coaching sessions, she added. These opportunities require investment. Whatever you need, my father said supportively. This could be the big one. Uncle Frank, who had been listening quietly, cleared his throat. You know, I have been curious about something. If acting jobs pay so little, as you mentioned earlier, how do you manage to help your parents financially while maintaining your lifestyle in Los Angeles? That city is notoriously expensive. A brief uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Katie blinked it several times, then laughed lightly. Good money management, Uncle Frank. Prioritize what matters. Family comes first, then career necessities, then personal expenses. Smart budgeting, my mother quickly added. Plus, Katie continued gaining confidence. Commercial work pays surprisingly well when you book national spots. And there are always side gigs in the industry. Must be quite a few side gigs. Uncle Frank persisted. Los Angeles rent alone would eat up most early career acting salaries. I found myself studying Katie's expression. For the first time that evening, she looked slightly uncomfortable, her usual confidence wavering. Katie is very resourceful, my father interjected. Always has been. We are just grateful for her help during tough times, my mother added, patting Katie's hand. Not everyone would support your parents the way she has. Something in me shifted. Perhaps it was the accumulation of years of invisibility of contribution without acknowledgement. Perhaps it was the blatant falsehood being perpetuated at the table. Or perhaps it was simply that after 6 years and $80,000, I was tired of the charade. Katie, I said calmly, when did you start helping mom and dad financially? Katie looked startled by the direct question. Well, on and off for years now, whenever they needed it. So, around the time of dad early retirement, when the market crashed. I guess so, she said less certainly. Why are you irrigating me at dinner? I am not interrogating you, I am just trying to understand the timeline. My mother intervened. Reagan Brooks, this is hardly appropriate dinner conversation. We were celebrating Katie's success. I am just curious. I persisted. Approximately how much have you contributed to the household expense since dad retirement ballpark figure? The tension at the table was palpable. My cousins exchanged glances while Aunt Meredith leaned forward slightly, clearly interested in the answer. Katie flushed. I do not keep track of that kind of thing. When family needs help, you just help. You would not understand because you have always been so calculating with money. I am an analyst. Being precise with figures is literally my job. Well, not everything can be reduced to a spreadsheet, Reagan Brooks snapped. Some of us have emotional intelligence, too. My mother narrowed her eyes at me. Why are you trying to diminish your sister's accomplishments? This is supposed to be a celebration. I am not diminishing anything. I am asking a simple question that no one seems able to answer. Katie pushed her plate away dramatically. You have always been jealous of me, just Beckos. I pursued my passion instead of taking the safe route. Jealous, I repeated, feeling a strange calm settling over me. Of what exactly? Of my creativity, my willingness to take risks, of the fact that I am actually making it in a competitive industry while you push papers in an office. Katie Logan warned quietly, looking uncomfortable. But Katie was on a roll now. You have resented the fact that I have actual talent while you just have a knack for numbers. Admit it. My mother chose that moment to deliver the blow that would change everything. She hissed across the table. You are just bitter because Katie succeeded, and all you will ever be is a number cruncher in a cubicle. The table fell silent. I felt Tavariona eyes on me waiting for my reaction. In that moment, 6 years obstinate support of denials and sacrifices, of being the invisible backbone of the family, while Cassarest all the credit, it all crystallized into perfect clarity. I set down my napkin and looked directly at my mother. My voice was steady, almost conversational when I said, then ask Katie to return the $80,000 I have given you since college. I am sure a successful actress would have no problem repaying that. The silence that followed was absolute. My father forklattered onto his plate, his face draining of color. My mother froze wineglass halfway to her lips. Aunt Meredith's mouth formed a perfect O of surprise and Katie stared at me as if I had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. Logan looked from Katie to me, confusion giving way to understanding as he processed what I had just revealed. What are you talking about? Katie finally managed her voice unnaturally high. The monthly transfers to dad account. The extra money for the refrigerator, the car, repairs, the property taxes. The money that kept this house from foreclosure 6 years ago. I maintained eye contact with my mother, as I spoke. That did not come from Katie. It came from me every single month for 6 years. That is ridiculous, my mother said weakly. Why would you make up such a thing? Aunt Meredith leaned forward. Diane, is this true? Has Reagan Brooks been supporting you? Of course not, my mother responded automatically. Katie Hazelways helped us out when needed. I reached for my phone, opened my banking app, and slid it across the table to Uncle Frank. 6 years of transfers. $1,100 monthly, at first increasing to $1,500 over time. Plus extras for emergencies and renovations. Uncle Frank studied the screen, then looked up at my father. His expression, a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. William, my father, could not meet his brother's gaze. He stared down at his plate, shoulders slumped into feet. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as the truth settled over the gathering. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds. Finally, my mother broke it with a nervous laugh. This is absurd. Reagan Brooks is obviously confused about something. I am not confused, I said calmly. I have been transferring money to dad account since his early retirement. The same account you use for household expenses. The money you have been crediting to Katie. I never said Katie was giving us money. My mother backpedaled. Perhaps you misunderstood, literally just said it 15 minutes ago. Aunt Meredith pointed out. You said, and I quote, "We are just grateful for her help during tough times." My father finally spoke, his voice barely audible. It is true. Reagan Brooks has been helping us financially for several years now. Dad, Katie gasped, color draining from her face. The transfers come in regularly. He continued, still not looking up. I never told you it was Katie. Diane. You assumed that, and I did not correct you. My mother's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and finally settled on anger. Why would you keep something like that from me? Because you never wanted to admit we needed help, my father answered, especially not from Reagan Brooks. It was always Katie who was supposed to be the successful one. Katie pushed back from the table abruptly. This issue humiliating. You have all been lying to me. Her eyes filled with tears, making think I was helping when I could barely make rent some months. No one asked you to claim credit for money you never sent, I pointed out. I never claimed anything, Katie shouted. Mom and Dad always said they were doing fine. Then occasionally they would thank me for my support, and I thought they were just being nice about the occasional check I sent for birthdays or Christmas. Occasional check, I repeated Katie. They believe you have been supporting them substantially for years. That is why they praise you constantly and dismiss everything I do. They think you are the reason they still have Thief's house. That is not true, my mother protested, but her voice lacked a conviction. Katie turned to our parents. Have you been telling people I was supporting you financially? Neither answered, which was answer enough. I cannot believe this, Cassie said, tears now streaming down her face. I am being ambushed at what was supposed to be my celebration dinner. Reagan Brooks is obviously making this up to ruin my moment because she is jealous. I am not making anything up, I said, pulling up more bank records on my phone. Would you like to see 6 years of transfers? The dates correspond with the renovations, the new appliances, the property tax payments. This is a private family matter, my mother announced to the table at large. Perhaps we should discuss it, Anna Thirdum. We are family, too, Aunt Meredith said firmly. And frankly, Diane, I have listened to you praise Katie financial support for years, while barely acknowledging Reagan Brooks. If what she is saying is true, you have some serious explaining to do. It is true, my father confirmed, finally looking up. His eyes met mine, briefly filled with shame. Reagan Brooks has been our primary support since my retirement package fell short. Without her, we would have lost the house years ago. Katie stood up suddenly. I need some air. She walked out of the dining room, footsteps heavy on the new hardwood floors. My mother glared at me, then at my father. I cannot believe you have done this. She threw her napkin on the table and followed Katie. An uncomfortable silence descended on the remaining dinner guests. My cousins stared at their plates while Uncle Frank and Aunt Meredith exchanged meaningful glances. How much exactly? Uncle Frank finally asked. About $80,000 over 6 years, I answered, give or take. And they never acknowledged it. Never thanked you, Aunt Meredith. Sounded incredulous. They did not know it was me. Dad knew, but apparently never told Mom. I think he was too ashamed to admit how bad things were financially. Logan, who had been silent through the revelation, finally spoke. That is an incredible act of generosity, Reagan Brooks. Most people would not do that without recognition. It was not about recognition, I said, though that was not entirely true. They are my parents. They needed help. Uncle Frank turned to my father. William Hewlett, your daughter supports you for years while giving another daughter credit. Do you realize how hurtful that is? My father nodded, eyes downcast. I never meant for it to happen this way. At first it was just a temporary solution until I found consulting work. Then it became a regular thing, and the longer it went on, the harder it was to tell Federith and the lies about Katie. Aunt Meredith pressed. Diane assumed he said weekly. Katie would send small gifts occasionally, and Diane built a narrative around it. I should have corrected her. But Katie has always been the favorite, I finished for him. It was easier to let Mom believe her golden child was the successful one. More uncomfortable silence followed. I heard raised voices from the backyard. Cationed, my mother arguing. My cousins made awkward excuses and slipped out to the living room, leaving me with my father, Uncle Frank, Aunt Meredith, and Logan. I am so sorry, Reagan Brooks. My father said, his voice breaking. You deserved better than this. The simple acknowledgement released something in me emotions I had kept carefully controlled for years. I blinked rapidly, determined not to cry at the dinner table. Logan, sensing my discomfort, changed the subject slightly. What made you decide to help them secretly rather than openly? At first, I thought it would preserve their dignity. Then it became clear they preferred to believe the money came from Katie. It seemed easier to let them have that fiction than force them to acknowledge reality. That was remarkably, Logan observed. And remarkably unhealthy for everyone involved. I am beginning to see that now, I admitted. The back door slammed and my mother turned without Katie. She began clearing plates with aggressive movements, avoiding eye contact with Avarian. I think I should go, I said, standing up. Running away now that Yaha ruined dinner, my mother snapped. Uncle Frank stood as well. Diane, that is enough. Your daughter has supported you for years while you gave another daughter credit. You should be on your knees thanking her, not attacking her. My mother said nothing, but her hands trembled as she stacked dishes. I will walk you out, Logan offered, surprising me. We moved through the living room where my cousins were huddled, pretending not to have been listening to everything. Outside, the evening air was cool and refreshing after the heated tension of the dining room. That was intense, Logan said as we walked toward my car. For what it is worth, I think what you did was incredibly generous, even if the secrecy part was problematic. Thank you, I said, surprised by his kindness. Sorry, you had to witness family drama on your first visit. Actually, it was illuminating. Explains a lot about Katie. He hesitated, then added, she always portrays herself as this hugely successful actress who helps her parents. Finding out none of that is true makes me reconsider some things. Yoon locked my car then turned to him. She does have talent and she did land that Netflix role on her own merits. The financial stuff is separate from that. He nodded. That is gracious of you to say, considering everything. Listen, would it be okay if I got your number just in case there is fallout from tonight? Katie might need some support from both of us. I gave him my number, touched by his concern, despite the awkward circumstances. As I drove away, the emotional weight of the evening hit me all at once. 6 years of secrets had exploded in a single moment, changing family dynamics that had been established since childhood. There was no going back now, only forward into unknown territory. Halfway home, my phone rang. I answered in Bluetooth, expecting it to be Katie or my parents. Reagan Brooks, it is Logan, just checking that you are okay. You seemed pretty shaken when you left. His unexpected concern broke something loose in me. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry openly about my family, about the years of invisibility, about the painful truth that had finally emerged. The next morning, I awoke to multiple missed calls from various family members. 2 from my father, 1 from Aunt Meredith, 3 from Katie, and surprisingly, none from my mother. I was preparing coffee when a knock at my apartment door startled me. Through the peephole, I saw my father standing in the hallway, looking as if he had aged a decade overnight. His clothes were rumpled, his hair uncombed. I opened the door, unsure what to say. May I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside, allowing him into my small but tedious. He looked around, noticing the framed financial certifications on the wall. The bookshelf, filled with economics texts and financial journals. I have never been to your place before. He observed the reality of that statement hanging between us. Would you like coffee? I offered, falling back on politeness in the absence of knowing what else to do. Please. We sat at Miss Smell kitchen table, steam rising from our mugs, neither speaking immediately. Finally, my father broke the silence. I need to tell you how deeply ashamed he began, his voice unsteady. Not just about the money, though that is bad enough, but about how I have treated you compared to Katie. I stared into my coffee. Why did you never tell Mom the money came from me? He sighed heavily. It was complicated. At first, I was too ashamed to tell her how bad things really were. Then, when she assumed it was Katie, it just seemed easier. Your mother has always had certain expectations about how our family should appear to others. And Katie was always meant to be the successful one, I supplied. It was not that simple, he countered, then paused. Or maybe it was. Katie's struggles have always been more visible, more dramatic, your strength, your self-sufficiency. It made it too easy to take you for granted. He took a deep breath before continuing. There is something else you do not know. 2 years ago, I had a minor heart attack. My head snapped up. What? Why was I never told? We did not tell either of you girls. Your mother was afraid it would worry you unnecessarily. I was put on medication told to reduce stress. The medical bills added another of financial pressure. You should have told me, I said, hurt by this additional secret. I know that now. Boot your mother. She has this image of how a father should be. Strong, providing, never weak. Admitting we needed your financial help would have shattered that image, so you let her believe it was Katie. Yes, he admitted it was wrong. I justified it by telling myself I was protecting everyone. Your mother, pride catty self-image, your freedom from feeling obligated, but really, I was just protecting myself from having to face the truth, as painful as his words were. I appreciated his honesty. Thank you for admitting that it is the very least I can do. Reached across the table, hesitantly placing his hand over mine. Reagan Brooks, I need you to know something. I have always been proud of you. Your intelligence, your work ethic, your kindness. I just never knew how to show it the way I did with Katie. Tears threatened again, but I held them back. It hurt, Dad, watching Katie get praised for things she never did while my actual contributions were invisible. I know, Hess said simply, and I will spend however many years I have left trying to make it right if you will let me. Our conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. It was Katie. I answered, putting it on speaker so our father could hear. How dare you ambush me like that? She began without preamble. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was, Katie? I said calmly. I did not plan to reveal all of that at dinner, but years of lies had finally reached a breaking point. Lies, never lied about anything. I had no idea Mom and Dad were telling people. I was supporting them. But you never corrected them when they thanked you for your financial support. There was a pause. I thought they were being nice about the birthday checks and Christmas money I sent. I had no idea they were talking about substantial amounts. My father spoke up. Katie, I am Hera with Reagan Brooks, and what she is saying is true. Your mother and I allowed a fiction to develop about your financial support when in reality it was Reagan Brooks keeping us afloat all these years. Dad, Katie sounded surprised to hear him. So you have just been lying to my face for years, letting me believe I was actually helping you when I could barely help myself. Do you know how stupid that makes me feel? We never meant to hurt you, sweetheart, he began. Do not sweetheart me right now, Katie snapped. I have spent years feeling guilty that I could not do more to help you, while apparently, Reagan Brooks was sending thousands soft dollars that you were attributing to me. Her anger was justified. I realized she too had been caught in our parents' web of deception, albeit in a very different way than I had. Katie, I said, would it help if we all sat down together, maybe with a family therapist? There are clearly deeper issues here than just the money. To my surprise, she agreed immediately. Yes. Because this is messed up on so many levels, and Mom is refusing to even discuss it. Shay's acting like nothing happened. That does not surprise me, our father said quietly. We arranged to meet the following weekend with a family therapist I researched and contacted that same day. Before hanging up, Katie said something unexpected. Reagan Brooks, thank you not for the money thing that was messed up to keep secret, but for forcing the truth out. I feel like I have been living in some weird alternate reality. After Katie called, my father and I talked for another hour. He revealed that their financial situation had been even worse than I knew, with medical debt and a second morgue I had known nothing about. My contributions had literally saved their home multiple times over. I need to set some boundaries going forward. I told him I cannot keep supporting the household at this level, especially not without acknowledgement. He nodded. You should not have to. I am going to increase my consulting hours, and your mother needs to face reality about Earth. Later that day, I received a surprising text from Logan. Spent the day with Katie processing everything. She is actually handling it better than expected. Wanted to check how you are doing. His thoughtfulness touched me. We exchanged a few messages about the situation, and he offered to be present at the family therapy session for moral support. Sometimes an outside perspective helps, he wrote. 3 days later, my mother finally called. Her voice was stiff, formal, as if speaking to a stranger. Your father thinks we need to talk. We do. I do not appreciate being made to look like a fool in front of the entire family, she began. And I did not appreciate 6 years of my financial support being attributed to Katie, I countered. A long silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, her voice broke. Do you know how hard it is to admit that you cannot provide for yourself after decades of independence? How humiliating it is to need your child financial help. I can imagine it is difficult, I said carefully. But pretending the money came from Katie rather than acknowledging my help, that was not the solution. I know, she whispered. It was easier to believe Katie was the successful one. It fit the narrative I had always imagined for our family. And what narrative waste that our artistic, creative daughter would make it big and take care of everyone, while our practical, responsible daughter would be fine on her own. You never seemed to need us, Reagan Brooks. Not the way Katie did. The painful truth of her words struck me. In trying to be self-sufficient, I had perhaps made it too easy for them to overlook me. I needed your recognition, I said quietly. Your acknowledgement, your pride in my accomplishments. For the first time in our adult relationship, my mother truly heard me. I am sorry, she said, her voice thick with tears. I have failed you as a mother. The family therapy session that weekend was difficult but necessary. With the therapist's skilled guidance, we began unpacking decades of family dynamics. Katie acknowledged her role in accepting praise for things she had not done. Our parents confronted their pattern of favoritism and the damage I thought caused. And I spoke openly about my resentment and hurt. Moving forward, the therapist suggested, this family needs radical honesty and clear boundaries. No more financial support without acknowledgement. No more accepting credit for things you have and not done. No more pretending problems do not exist. We all agreed though. I knew changing lifelong patterns would take more than a single therapy session. Still, it was a beginning. In the weeks that followed, our family underwent a transformation. Extended family members reached out to me separately. Aunt Meredith took me to lunch and apologized for not seeing what was happening. Uncle Frank offered business connections for my career advancement. Cousins who had dismissed me now sought my advice on financial matters. Most surprisingly, Logan and I developed a genuine friendship amid the family chaos. His perspective as an outsider helped me see patterns I had been too close to recognize. When Katie decided to move back from Los Angeles to reassess her career and priorities, Logan supported her decision while continuing to build his own connection with me. You two, are actually good for each other, Katie observed one day after catching us in deep conversation. Who would have thought my fake financial success would lead to something real between my sister and my ex-friend, I questioned. We work better as friends, she explained with surprising maturity. Plus, he clearly has a thing for financially responsible women who tell truth. Cannot imagine where he got that crazy idea. She winked, showing a self-awareness I had not given her credit for. Slowly, painfully, our family began rebuilding on a foundation of truth rather than appearances. It was not easy, and there were many difficult conversations ahead, but first time, I felt truly seen by my parents and sister. 6 months after the dinner, that changed everything. Our family gathered again around the same table. The difference was palpable. My father, looking healthier after taking his cardiac rehabilitation seriously, sat beside my mother, who had finally started part-time work at a local design store. Tapping into a passion she had long neglected, Katie, now settled in a smaller apartment, 20 minutes from our parents, had found work teaching drama at a community arts center. The joy she found in nurturing young talent seemed more fulfilling than the constant rejection of auditions. She still took occasional local acting jobs, but without the pressure of making it her sole identity, and I had Matakanjas too. After years of putting work above everything, I had declined a promotion that would have required extensive travel, choosing instead to prioritize rebuilding relationships and creating better balance in my life. Logan sat beside me. Our relationship evolved from friendship to something more over the months of family reconstruction. His steady presence and outsider perspective had been invaluable to everyone during the healing process. I would like to propose a toast, my father said, raising his glass. To honesty, however, painful, and to Reagan Brooks, whose generosity kept this family afloat in more ways than one. My mother, who had struggled the most with our new reality, added, and to forgiveness, which I am still learning to both give and receive. The atmosphere was different from our gatherings of the past. Less performance, more authenticity. We had joined a family financial therapy group, learning healthier ways to discuss money and support without, you know what I realized, Katie said as we cleared dishes together after dinner, a task she would have avoided in the past. I spent so many years thinking I needed to be famous to be valuable. But teaching these kids, seeing them light up when they master a scene, it feels more real than any audition success ever did. You are really good at it, I acknowledged, having watched her teach a class the previous week. You have a gift for bringing out people confidence. Speaking of gifts, my mother said, entering the kitchen with a small package. This is for you, Reagan Brooks. I unwrapped it cautiously, finding a silver frame containing my graduate school diploma. Something I had given to my parents years ago that had never been displayed. It is going on the mantle, she sighed firmly, where it should have been all along. Next to Katie Drama Award, Andy our father teaching combination. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one, a visible sign that my achievements were finally being valued. Later that evening, as Logan and I walked through my parents' neighborhood, he asked, "Do you regret it? The money, I mean. 6 years of supporting them secretly." I considered the question carefully. I regret the secrecy, not the support. Family helps family. That part I believe in, but enabling harmful patterns, allowing lies to continue that I regret deeply. You know what amazes me about you, he said, taking my hand. You found a way to be generous without becoming a doormat. When it was time to speak up, you did, even though it was terrifying. It was necessary. I corrected. For everyone. And it had been. Katie had confided recently that discovering the truth had freed her from an impossible standard she could never meet. I was trying to be successful enough to actually help them the way everyone thought I already was. It was crushing me. My father's health had improved, with reduction in stress and secrecy. My mother was slowly finding her own identity beyond being Katie mother. And I was learning that being valued did not require being perfect or invisible. The most profound lesson I had learned was that real love does not thrive in shadows. The financial support I had provided came from a place of genuine care. But by keeping it secret, I had enabled destructive patterns that hurt everyone, including myself. True support requires honesty, boundaries, and mutual respect, not just sacrifice. At our most recent family therapy session, the therapist had noted how far we had come. What happened in your family is actually quite common, she explained. Financial enabling often pairs with emotional dynamics established in childhood. Breaking those patterns takes tremendous courage from everyone involved. That courage was on work. There were still difficult days, old habits that resurfaced moments of doubt. But underneath it all was a foundation of truth that had never existed before. Last week, my parents hosted a holiday gathering where for the first time, my professional accomplishments were mentioned with genuine pride. My mother actually asked thoughtful questions about my work while my father sought my advice on his retirement account adjustments. I never thought I would see the day, Aunt Meredith whispered to me. Your mother just bragged about your investment strategy to her friend from church without mentioning Katie once. Small steps, but meaningful ones. As the year anniversary of that fateful dinner approaches, I find myself reflecting on how a single moment of truth shattered decades of unhealthy patterns and created space for something authentic to grow in their place. Have you ever had to speak a difficult truth to someone you love? Or have you kept quiet to keep peace, only to find the silence becoming its own burden? I have learned that relationships built on honesty may be more challenging, but they are infinitely more rewarding than those built on comfortable fictions. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more about navigating complicated family dynamics and leave a comment sharing your own experience with financial or emotional enabling. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these struggles is the first step toward change. Like and share if you know someone who might need permission to speak their truth even when it is difficult. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisible support to visible strength. And remember that authentic relationships always begin with honest conversation, even when that conversation feels impossible. Music.